Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. What is one city and county in Western Kentucky doing to focus on many of the global challenges and international activities that are underway, as well as lending a voice into preparing for communities of the future? We'll be back in just a moment to talk about these and other important issues. Welcome back to our program. Today you're watching Global Connections Television, which is a privately funded, independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections are solely those of the moderator and his guest. We would invite our viewers to go to our website at www.globalconnectionstelevision.com to view previous programs. Also, if you're involved with a PBS or community access television station, or perhaps a university that has an intra-campus television hookup, or you just have a website and you're interested in our programs and would like to share them with your family, friends, the community, whatever, please go to the website and feel free to download them. Global Connections Television is provided free of charge at no cost as an international public service. Today we're taking a look at a community in West Kentucky in the United States of America and what the university as well as many of the institutions within that community are doing to deal with globalization, to deal with international outreach, to deal with many of the international challenges that we have today. My guest is an expert on this community and on these issues. My guest today is Mr. Rick Dubose. After two careers, Mr. Rick Dubose in 2013 became Assistant Vice President of Development and Alumni Relations and the Executive Director of the Western Kentucky University Alumni Association in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Rick Dubose, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
It's great to be here, Bill, and I have a very checkered past. I probably had more than two careers, but that's good enough.
We'll leave two on here. We won't go into that third one.
We'll stick with two.
Let's go with this one. Great. Well, great to have you today. I appreciate it. And we're going to be looking at Bowling Green, Kentucky. Let's just start off with a little overview of how large Bowling Green is and that type of thing. Then we'll get into Western Kentucky University. Even though we're talking about a particular community in Kentucky, this could be a microcosm of a particular community in Ohio, in Bolivia, in Sri Lanka, wherever it may be. Those universities and those communities are undergoing the same challenges and some of the same problems, if you will, as we're encountering in Kentucky. But let's talk a little bit. Where's Bowling Green, and talk a bit about the county. How large is it?
Well, you know, it's Bowling Green's very well located. We're right on I-65. Mm-hmm. We're about an hour and 45 minutes south of Louisville and about an hour north of Nashville, Tennessee. So I think that has driven our growth. I saw an article just recently in the Courier Journal, I believe, quoting a source that said that Bowling Green is the fastest growing community in the Commonwealth. We now, I think, are the third largest city in Kentucky. But it's a community within the city limits of about 65 to 70,000 people. In the county, you probably have 110 to 120,000. In the service area, which is about a 10-county area, you probably have a bit over 200,000 people. So it's a good-sized community. I think it's a perfect size. It's big enough to have most everything that you might need and want, and close enough to other places that it's easy to get to. But it's always been a very diverse economically and ethnically community.
Now, as far as international activities, you were on the Chamber of Commerce committee, or you worked with the Warren County Chamber of Commerce, Bowling Green?
That was the other career.
That was the other
that
career.
I had. I worked with the Bowling Green Warren County Chamber of Commerce. It's now the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce for about 8 years, back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I was their executive vice president. My role was concentrating on community development. And so we did a lot of programming related to that and related to things international, because that's just part of it.
And of course, with any other community around the world, no matter where it is, I'm sure that chamber was looking at trying to get reverse economic investment in. You probably have many businesses in Warren County, Bowling Green area that are involved in international trade, do you not?
We do. We have a very healthy, robust industrial community. Probably the one best known, well, probably the best known one is the Corvette assembly plant. They have been there over 25 years now, and every Corvette that you see on the road was assembled in Bowling Green. But probably the largest international company, I mean, of course, General Motors would be bigger, but as far as one with its headquarters in Bowling Green, that would be Fruit of the Loom and all of their various brands. They have been there a long, long time, and they've gone through different ownership. Right now, they're owned by Warren Buffett and his Berkshire Hathaway company, but they have a couple thousand employees and do business all over the world.
Now, of course, looking within the community of Bowling Green, you have Western Kentucky University of about 20,000 students. You have a very interesting theme or motto at WKU, we'll call it. What is that theme, and how does it tie into what happens on the campus?
And I've forgotten how many years ago, may have been 5 years ago, something like that, our president, Dr. Gary Ransdale, who's always been very keen on international issues, changed our mission statement or our logo, whatever one would like to call it, to a leading American university with international reach. And he has stayed true to that, and we have a lot going on in the international area.
What are some of your programs that you have? I'm sure you have international students on campus.
We do.
What types of programs? How many students do you have, and what types of programs do you have over and above that?
We have in the neighborhood of 1,200 students from other countries. We also have a couple of programs related to China. We have the Chinese flagship program, which is a total immersion into the Chinese language and the Chinese culture. That is a program of the Defense Department. And the Defense Department does these with several different languages. We have the Chinese one. And they do it in an effort to educate young people of different skills. This person who's in it could be an engineer, could be a performing arts major, could be an English major, to train them where they're fluent in the language and they also are comfortable with the culture of whatever country it is. So I think we have 20 or 30 people in a cohort every year, and they will spend time in China every year, and they have to become fluent. And their last semester is done at a Chinese university. And then we also became one of the homes, I think maybe UK is as well at this point. They were at one time.
University of Kentucky.
Yes,
Right.
University, not the United Kingdom.
Not the United Kingdom.
We're talking international.
That's right.
Of the Confucius Institute, which is a program of the Chinese government, which sends language teachers and people that understand the culture of China into a particular university, and they spread out over the area, and they work in the schools. They teach the language and they teach the culture, and we've been doing that for 5 or 6 years as well.
Exactly.
So yeah, we're very much in, and we do a lot of study abroad. Yeah.
Exactly right. Cultural exchange programs,
Sure.
students, professors, those types of things. I'm sure too, you have a lot of migrants coming into your area. I'm sure you have many Latinos.
Well, we do
have a lot of Latinos.
We do.
Around the state of Kentucky. Did you mention you had a Bosnian community? Is that correct?
We have a very large Bosnian community.
A large Bosnian
very
community.
large Bosnian community, 6,000 plus in a county of a little over 100,000. So that's, somebody said, now I can't say that it's a fact, that we per capita have the largest Bosnian community in the States. And this started back, I guess, right as the Vietnam War was ending. We had a lady who started a program called the Refugee Assistance Center, and she brought over maybe 100 families from Southeast Asia, and they assimilated, and then when the Eastern Bloc broke up, then she brought over several families of Bosnians, and it just has grown and grown and grown, and it really has made our community, I think, much richer. And so we have at 2 of the high schools, 25 to 30 languages spoken.
And as we were talking earlier, I mentioned that this is a microcosm of a community. It could be any place. It could be somewhere in Japan, or it could be in Thailand, or it could be Mexico, wherever it might be. of a university and a town dealing with the same issues that you're dealing with in Bowling Green. I was thinking too that you're in what we call the Barren River Area Development
That's
District,
correct.
which is a geopolitical planning body for there are 15 area development districts around the state of Kentucky. Not to get too far in the weeds, but within that Barren River Area Development District, you've got a pristine natural resource. That is Mammoth Cave National Park. And as I recall, thinking back to it was 1990, as I recall.
Early 90s.
In 1990, that the federal government, the state officials, the Barren River development people, the Warren County, everybody in that ad district came to the conclusion that Mammoth Cave was a beautiful, one of the largest cave systems in the world, but it was becoming an open sewer. I mean, it was really being destroyed. And I remember they applied, it was in 90 and then in 91, they came online to participate in the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, Man in the Biosphere Program. And that's where UNESCO came in and provided just technical assistance. They had no control over Barren River, didn't control 1 inch of that, but brought together the federal people, the state people, the planners, the farmers, the university people, business community, everybody in that community and all throughout that area development district, they were involved in developing a plan, what we called then a strategic plan, we may not today, but they've really cleaned that up and improved it immensely over these past several years. And it's not just Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, but the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, Everglades National Park in Florida, they're participating in this UN program, and it's been beneficial for everybody, has it not?
It has. It was very active in the 90s at Mammoth Cave, and it's still going on today. But of course, the thrust of the work was early on when there needed to be so much done. And the university has had, for a long, long time, a great working relationship with Mammoth Cave because we have a very well-respected karst topography program. Because, as you know, our geography is probably one of the most extensive as far as cave systems are concerned. So it's always a problem with pollution in caves and and underground water. And our professors have worked with them a great deal over the years. And I'm right now serving on their Mammoth Cave, the Friends of Mammoth Cave Advisory Board, and sustainability and preserving the environment is always a topic at our meetings.
It certainly is. And you mentioned the karst limestone situation, which is very porous. And of course, thinking back to that era, one of the problems was that the farmers, and you've got a lot of farmers in your area, were putting chemicals on, fertilizer. They were leaching right down into the water in Mammoth Cave. And it was amazing that they all came together and they were so proud. I remember they did a video on it. I remember seeing it one time. And they were so proud that everybody, the business community, the university, the farmers, everybody agreed this was a great program. And they wanted to maintain that pristine natural resource, but still have it produce revenue. And they've been able to do that. But that was just one example of literally hundreds of these Man in the Biosphere programs around the world. Well, we talked about Mammoth Cave, we talked about Bowling Green, we talked about Western Kentucky. Let's talk about a headier topic, if you will. I had a guest on not long ago, a very interesting gentleman, Rick Smyer, who wrote Preparing for a World That Doesn't Exist Yet, Framing a Second Enlightenment to Create Communities of the Future. And it's an extremely interesting book. It's a very readable book. And it's one that's, I think, is a harbinger of what's coming up in the future. Now, you were involved, you didn't write the book, but you've been involved over the years with Rick Smyer. What was your role in helping to frame this discussion and to help people better understand it? Well, first off, what does the book do? Before I get into that, but sort of what's it about?
Well, it's Rick is a dear friend of mine. I've known him for years, and he gives us and Bowling Green credit for being there at the beginning for the Communities of the Future program, which he has been a part of for 27 years, maybe longer, I'm not sure. And so the book is kind of how that program and those philosophies and those principles and those ways of thinking have evolved. And it's been interesting to read the book and also to think back to when we first started. The principles are all the same, but it's a lot more sophisticated. And what's in the book lets us know it's a lot more urgent that we do a lot of these things that Rick talks about.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were involved in helping to set up a state transformation network. Is that correct? Or
Well, you know,
what is that?
we're in the early stages of
You're in the
that.
early
That
stages
is,
of
that's,
that.
we've kind of come back around. When I was at the chamber back in the 90s, we did a lot of work with Rick and his Communities of the Future program. And through the chamber, we had a committee that we got together of people that were interested, and they learned about capacity building. They learned about all the principles of Communities of the Future. And in turn, you know, they helped stage some events and do some other things. And then as things are, I went in another direction. The leadership at the chamber changed, and you know, the program became dormant for a while. And now we've kind of come back around, and Rick and I have reconnected, and we're looking at creating a network across the Commonwealth of Kentucky that would again advance these new ways of thinking and the new ways of looking at how we are going to need to operate in the present and the future because of the incredible rate of change that's going on.
Now, this would apply, you were talking about doing it in Kentucky, North Carolina, I think is another state, but these are concepts, these are ideas that could apply in just about any area of the world if people wanted to focus on this and to set up these types of groups to look at how what we used to call strategic planning, now we're not calling it quite strategic planning, but we're still looking at what to do and how to deal with climate change, artificial intelligence, robotics, different things like that. Is that the way we need to focus on this?
You know, and I think so, and we talked about it over lunch a little bit. We've got to do things differently, and in order to do things differently, we've got to change the way we think, and we've got to change the way everybody thinks. And you see it in Kentucky as well as you see it anywhere else. We are reluctant to do that, and so we have to start planting the seeds at the local level if we're going to affect any change at the state and also at the national level. So to me, that's the most important thing about this program, is starting it at the grassroots level and then letting it spread and build it so that we can move rapidly enough to take care of the issues that you talked about, climate change and you know, robotics and the loss of jobs and wealth, income disparity.
Are these the main issues that are being dealt with in Bowling Green, Warren County? I know you want jobs, you want to reverse economic investment. Every community wants that. You want to improve your higher education system, your middle education system, the primary school education system, every one of those. But those items we mentioned, are they on the drawing board with the Chamber of Commerce? I know you don't work for them anymore, but still being focused on at the university and in other venues in your area?
Yeah, very much so. I think having the university there and having our karst topography like we do, and the department that concentrates on sustainability and climate change and the environment, that permeates throughout the community. And so yes, it is always kind of top of the mind as far as the community is concerned, to be concerned about air quality, water quality, all of those things. And yes, and you know, in a word, all of those things we worry about. And you know, when it comes to the economy side of it, you know, we've got a fairly decent economy, and we've got people that are doing fairly well. But you know, we have that gap like everybody else has, and we also have some you know, some poverty, some very severe poverty. We have, you know, homeless people, a pretty good number, which you know was just unheard of a few years ago. So yeah, you know, we're like you say, a microcosm. We're dealing with all the issues that most every other community, and especially a community of any significance, is dealing with.
And of course, one thing we've tried to do with Global Connections Television is to provide information on many issues that don't get a lot of coverage. But this one with climate change is one I've tried to focus on as much as possible, because according to the scientists, 97% of the scientists, this is our #1 challenge. We see that the polar ice caps are melting. We see that the desertification is taking place. We see that the Great Barrier Reef is becoming washed out. I mean, the thing is actually bleaching out. And we have more and more of these environmental disasters like a Katrina or a Hurricane Sandy or whatever. The storms are becoming more frequent, they're more intense. And if we lose planet Earth, we've lost the ball game, the way I look at it. But climate change really is our number one problem, as I perceive it. Are you noticing anything in the Bowling Green area? I mean, you're not an environmentalist. I mean, not
I know what you
environmentalist,
mean.
but you don't deal with this issue every day.
I do not.
But are they talking about it? The farmers are saying, well, the droughts are getting longer. Have you heard much about that in your area?
We obviously have those that are deniers, but I think for the most part, farmers and people that I come in contact with, they realize how could you not realize climate change is going on? And so I think most people are more than willing to do what they can on an individual basis to try to curb it a little bit, but it's hard. It really is a very difficult thing to do. But again, it's got to start at the grassroots. You got to have people that understand how important it is. I remember I was in Leadership Kentucky a number of years ago and been involved in that.
What is Leadership Kentucky?
Leadership Kentucky is a statewide leadership program. They take individuals that they hope will remain in the state and become leaders. And I don't know, and I lose track, 35th year, maybe more. And but we had a fellow that would come in every year and talk about climate change. And I was in the program back in '91. And he was talking about what we're talking about today. And he said, if we wait until it's a crisis, it will be too late. And he really had some pretty scary things to say. And so I think more and more of that has to occur. Of course, that was a small group, but those of us that were there and those of us that hear those things other places, we need to be the disciples and to go out and spread that word.
He was really on the cutting edge back then because
he was.
We didn't hear much about it at that time. And
well,
now it's in our lexicon every day. We read more and more articles about it.
Well, it's just a news program. A week doesn't go by the news program doesn't talk about it.
Oh yeah, they need to. That's exactly right. They certainly do.
They do.
Another one before we run out of time, Rick.
Yes, sir.
Another one you mentioned poverty in your area. Another major problem is income inequality, and we've seen it. We used to refer to South America's countries as being the poster child of income inequality. Now we're looking at the United States and a lot of developed countries around the world. This is it has so much of a potential to be a detrimental effect on a society, because if people can't aspire to move into the middle class, to earn a decent living, to have enough money to pay the mortgage, to pay for the food, to pay for kids to go to school, this is going to be a major problem for them and for the society as a whole, is it not?
Well, it is, and artificial intelligence, automation, all those things, manufacturing jobs are becoming fewer and fewer. We have always been very successful and very aggressive in recruiting industry, and and we still do. We still get some. We still have some expansions, but that's shrinking, and people are manufacturing more with fewer people, and we're going, and that's why this Communities of the Future effort is so important, because we've got to start helping people understand that these jobs aren't going to be there. They've got to find ways to create their own businesses and their own income, and to come together for a project when it works, and then to separate and make other alliances along the way. The problem is the adjustment between what we have now and getting to that, especially in a rural area where you have people that they were just counting on working at the factory like Dad did. And it's going to be really hard for a lot of people to make that change. And it's going to be a lot of pain and the income equality will continue until we get to that point.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, those days have come to an end where you get a job, get out of high school or whatever, maybe out of college, you sign on, 30 years later you get a gold watch, you retire, and you have a nice retirement. And that's not the world we're living in today, and it's changing so dramatically. And of course, as you mentioned, artificial intelligence is a large part of it, the utilization of robotics, the disruption of the society because of income inequality, the climate change, which is costing us billions of dollars in many areas because of what's happening to how the climate is shifting. And these are all major problems. Of course, we see that the various organizations like the UN now has the Sustainable Development Goals, and one of those goals is to focus on climate change, to promote sustainable development. But there are many organizations, and the private sector too. A lot of the private businesses are working on these. So we see that it's changing, and it's going to be changing even more quickly, but we got to get on board to do it.
Well, we've got to get away from our old ways of thinking. with technology advancing the way it does, and strategic planning doesn't work much anymore because it's based on the present and the past, trying to predict the future when, you know, maybe the whole ball game is moving to another ballpark.
Right.
You know, so we've got to find a way to help our people understand all these things, and that's going to be a monumental effort. And that's why programs like Rick Smyer is talking about, and his co-author, they're critical. And I'd be lying if I sat here and said it.
No, that's right.
Said it would be easy. It will not be easy.
It will not be easy, but we have to deal with
do.
it. But Rick Dubose, I want to thank you for sharing a little insight, a lot of insight into Bowling Green and into Western Kentucky University, and helping us focus on Rick Smyer's book. But thank you for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us today on Global Connections Television.